iconic. The Economy of Certainty, an introduction to the Typology of Islamic legal theory by Aron Zysow. Harvard University, 1984, Cambridge, Massachusetts. The usual argument for making a distinction between approbation, that is ta'dil, that is general, and disapprobation is that the grounds of probity are innumerable. So approbation is ta'dil, praising someone for their narration, and disapprobation is jarh, injuring or criticizing someone for their narration. These grounds, as mentioned, are innumerable grounds for probity, whereas improbity can be confirmed by the mention of only one specific shortcoming. Alternatively, it is argued that there is only one ground for probity, while there are many grounds for disprobity or improbity, some of them being controversial. It is for this latter consideration that stands out in the Hanafi justification for their position. The Ahl al-Hadith had for a long time been accusing the Hanafis both of undervaluing the role of traditions and of exhibiting incompetence in their criticism. These charges were levelled against the early masters of the school, as well as against later scholars. Such open attacks the Hanafis felt themselves in a position to answer. In supporting the demand that disapprobation be based on a specific charge, they hoped to make it impossible for their opponents to prevail in the domain of hadith tradition by applying tacitly their own, often debatable standards. They demanded that the standards for approbation take into consideration their role in the community. The ways of the jurists are not those of the aesthetic. And the Arabic here, which has no Arabic text but is transliterated, so I apologize. أخلاق الفقهاء تخالف أخلاق الزهاد. The fuqaha being the jurist and the zuhad being a plural of zahid being the ascetic. What was fitting for one who had set a public example, Ahl al-Qudwa, might not be fitting for the solitary, Ahl al-Uzla. Clearly, the Hanafis had to react when such grounds for disapprobation were advanced as lack of expert competence in hadith transmission and excessive preoccupation with fiqh. The position attributed to al-Qarhi was not confined to the Hanafis, but was the standard Maliki doctrine and was popular among the Mu'tazila as well. Among the latter, it was held by Abu Ali al-Jubai, who demanded 2 mursils consistently with his stipulation of 2 reporters at every stage of transmission. His son Abu Hashim, Abdul Jabbar, and Abu Hussein al-Basri. Consequently, al-Qarhi, in rejecting the position of Isa ibn al-Abban, was completely in accord with mainstream Mu'tazila thought. The acceptance of the Mursal tradition increased the range of possibilities for filling in details of the law. It did not in any way bind those who accepted it, for the material conditions which the Hanafis and Malikis set for the unit tradition was such as to leave them ample room for rejecting both Mursal and Musnad traditions. Nor did the foregoing of the Isnad mean that anyone could quote a statement in the Prophet's name and expect it to become a legal norm. If such a tradition were previously unknown, it would be rejected. Abu Hussein al-Basri states, not because it is a Mursal, but because the hadith have been recorded and collected, and what is unknown to a hadith scholar of our day is falsehood. Among those who rejected Mursal, the case of Shafi'i offers particular problems of its own. Shafi'i was generally considered to have accepted the marasil of the Sahaba without reservation. Outside of this, he accepted only the marasil of Sa'id ibn al-Musayyib because those he had checked and found to be continuous. Some Shafi'is, however, rejected all marasil except those of Sa'id. They could find no principle on which to make an exception of the companions. Others denied that the marasil of Sa'id were special. Shafi'i had approved them because he was familiar with them. There was thus a current of Shafi'i thought which was ready to go beyond a Shafi'i in the rejection of Mursal. Closely associated with the problem of the mursal was that of the tradition in which the reporter was approbated but not named. أخبرني الثقة. Indeed, it was on the basis of Shafi'i's use of these traditions in the Mukhtasar of al-Muzani that al-Baqillani had argued that Shafi'i accepted the mursal. Obviously, Shafi'i had meant for these traditions to be accepted on his authority. Although some who rejected the mursal accepted traditions of this sort. Mainstream Shafi'i opinion refused to make a distinction. Shafi'i's use of these traditions called for an explanation. Thus, Abu Tayyib al-Tabari, who dies 450, commensurate with 1058, claimed that Shafi'i had meant to bind only himself. A more convincing answer was given by those who claimed to know the identity of the reporters Shafi'i was referring to. Shafi'i's, quote, an authority was a known personage, and there was consequently no irsal. It thus came about that when Imam al-Haramain made his case for the acceptance of these traditions as they stood, he was breaking with what was regarded by Shafi'is as the view of Shafi'i himself. Imam al-Haramain is al-Juwayni, a very famous legal scholar. Noting that to oppose a Shafi'i in usul al-fiqh is a serious matter, for, quote, he knew the field inside out. He tried to find support for his view in Shafi'i's writing. The Hanafi position was to accept these traditions. The sufficiency of probity was once again the dominant consideration. The accepted view among Ahl al-Hadith was to reject the mursal. Indeed, some went so far as to reject the Musnad tradition with a corresponding mursal. Presumably, the omitted reporter had some flaw and was therefore dropped from the isnad, where there was an implied disapprobation, and disapprobation always outweighed approbation. Ibn Hazm, in keeping with his principle that a unit tradition must have a sound isnad, rejects mursal out of hand. The omitted reporter is unknown, and we cannot judge the isnad without knowing his identity. The explicit warranty found in the form, quote, a reliable authority reported to me is equally unacceptable. One must conduct one's inquiry into the probity of the reporters. He rejects vigorously, however, the view that a musnad is impaired by a corresponding mursal. The silence of the reporter cannot be grounds for rejecting what he or someone else says elsewhere. Ibn Hazm's bitterness is primarily directed against the Malikis and the Hanafis. While claiming to accept the mursal, they are in fact the first to reject it when it runs counter to their teachings of their Imam. The number of cases in which this occurs run into the thousands, because they had used the mursal tradition to defend some legal positions. They said that they accepted the mursal on principle. Their aim was solely to defend the point in question with whatever was at hand, regardless of whether they simultaneously demolished 1,000 other positions of theirs. Furthermore, having made this point, they were concerned about invalidating it somewhere else. The Hanbalis are divided along more or less the same lines. As in the case of the unit tradition. Once again, two contradictory teachings are attributed to Ahmad ibn Hanbal. Abu Ya'la ibn al-Farra and ibn Aqil, who dies 513, commensurate with 1120, are the main proponents of the view which accept the marasil of all periods. In the case of the rejection of the mursal, the Hanbalis of the opposing camp are less rigid than we found them to be in their claims for the unit tradition. Ibn Taymiyyah considered Abu Ya'la to have had in mind a mursal in which a reporter was omitted rather than one without an isnad whatsoever. This he finds acceptable, for the, quote, omission of one or two is not like the omission of 10. In the case of two versions of a tradition, one musnad and the other mursal, the musnad is not thereby impugned. The tradition in which there is an explicit approbation of an unnamed reporter is also accepted. The issue of the mursal tradition was one on which the conservative Hanbalis were willing to make concessions, which did not jeopardize their claims that law recognized only unit traditions of certain authenticity. Those who were close to the Mu'tazila, such as Abu Ya'la and Ibn Aqil, had already rejected the pretensions of the unit tradition to certainty, and thus felt free to apply the principle of implied approbation. Stay tuned for many more. parts.